So this is our squat. The reason we're going to ask our athletes to do this is because first and foremost it's going to develop some leg strength. So what does that mean? That means our starts and our dives are going to have a bit more power to get us further into the water. Because our legs are stronger, we're also going to have more powerful underwaters or kicks or anything where we're using our legs powerfully. And then lastly, we're also going to develop a lot of mobility around the hips and the ankles, which is super important for especially breaststrokers. It's important that they've got good control of their hips to get those powerful kicks with their legs. And the last thing as well, we're going to look at spinal posture, which, as we know, is super important for streamline. So that's all the benefits we're going to get from doing this squat pattern. So the way I'll have people set up for squats is I'll say feet are shoulder width apart. And if you drew a clock on the ground, your feet would point to 11 and 1 on that clock face. And then what we're going to have kids do is interlock their hands. They go behind their head and elbows go back really far. This locks in their spine. And then we just ask them take their knees wide and sink down and back into that hole that they make with their knees. Okay, so from here, knees out, sink back and down in that hole, and come up. Okay, knees out, sink back and down in that hole, and come up. Okay, if I show you from the side, that same setup, my feet are shoulder width apart. I draw a clock on the ground, I go to 11 and 1 on that clock face, interlock my fingers, elbows all the way back, and I take my knees wide, sink down and back in that hole, and come up. Down and back in that hole, come up. Okay, so there's two key areas that we're going to see things go wrong in this. The first one is that our knees are probably going to come in. Okay, so an analogy I might use is that some of their kids' knees, if you look, they look like a teepee, like this, instead of looking like a bit of a house or a shed. Okay, so a teepee would look like this here, where their knees are coming in, like that. Especially people with flexible ankles, you're going to see this, and it just means you're going to bias a lot of quads, and the glutes and hamstrings will be shut off a bit, especially with females who are growing up. That's not what we want to do. We want to make sure they're biasing their glutes and their hamstrings, so it's important that we look at this. So in those people, you've got to make sure their feet are in the right place, so you make sure they're at least shoulder width, and then you can encourage them to make sure their knees go out first. Some kids don't understand this, so I'll have them shake their knees and then stop on the outside. So that's the position they've got to make. And then from there, they're going to sink back and down and come back. Okay. So that's what I would do, is make sure their feet are wide enough and you cue their knees to go out and they go back and down. You want to make that shed or house instead of a teepee like this. Okay. The second thing that we're always going to see is that people are probably not going low enough, especially kids who maybe run a lot, or especially people who've got long legs and kind of shorter torsos. You're going to really see them struggle to get into the bottom of that squat without that lower back kind of rounding really a lot. So in that case, what I have you do is use some tools to help you out with that. I might use weight plates in the gym, but you guys have access to a lot of kickboards probably. So that's when I would have 2 kickboards set up, slightly turned out, because then that'll get, replicate that 11 and 1 on the clock face. So you have their heels on this, their toes on the ground, heels on this, toes on the ground. Again, shoulder width apart, 11 and 1 on the clock face. Hands go back. And now they'll find it a lot easier to go out to the side here and sink down without having to tip forward here or their hips rounding. So you might see without these, they might not go, they might only be able to go here. Or for them to go lower, that's what happened. Okay. So again, you've got those two things that might go wrong. They might be too close, or they might not be on here. Make sure you get the right cues to figure that out. Okay. So that is our squat.